Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
And your co-host Rich Gear here as well, and we have a kind of a little travelogue and fun thing, but it really is relevant to our geological stuff that goes on with that. We were recently on Kauai, and I got to go there thanks to Doug and his family were out there, and it was a great time, Doug. I tell you, it's a beautiful place to be.
Right, we're going to talk about the young Na Pali coast.
Yes, and that's the big thing on the island of Kauai, right? That's the
right.
Yeah. Okay.
These, even according to evolutionists, are young according to their standards. So of course,
deep time.
Their deep time, of course, is in the hundreds of thousands of years rather than millions of years or the thousands
that we think
it is.
Yeah.
But we're going to make a case for the island of Kauai being very young, and we took a dinner cruise from Port Allen, which is down on the southern end of the island. Kauai is is the westernmost island in the chain, and actually there's Nihihau and a couple of smaller islands nearby.
Yeah, I can't remember their names. I remember just the four main ones,
Yeah, Nihihau, Lehua, and Kokua is the other two.
He's good. He's good.
And they're little things. Lehua is actually a scuba diving site.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
And so,
nobody really lives on that island then, right?
No, they really don't. And
the one island,
Nihihau is the forbidden, or they call it that because it's owned by a family, and there's they only speak Hawaiian on that island, and so it's sort of a bastion of the Hawaiian culture, and
really other people are not really allowed to go there unless I guess you get special permission from time to time, but generally speaking, no, you're not allowed to go there.
So we're going to do a little bit of geomorphology of the island of Kauai.
Right. Okay.
And it's really one of the more interesting of the islands. They call it the Garden Island, and it's because of the nature of the mountains in the way that they are affected by the trade winds. The trade winds come up against these cliffs. All the clouds rise up over, and then as they rise up, they deposit the rain on the tops of the cliffs.
Yeah, because I asked you earlier, I said, why does Kauai get so much rain? Do the other ones get as much rain? Well, they don't, but they still get a lot. But you mentioned Maui gets quite a bit of rain.
Yeah, it's all where the trade winds meet the cliffs on the coast and the shape of the mountains. And in this case, there's a mountain in the middle of Kauai. It's called Mount Wailaele, and it actually has a 3,000-foot cliff from the summit, and for a number of years, it was not possible actually to go there to the summit of that mountain because it was, you have to go through the alkali swamp. And it's because of all the rain that's coming up on there. The whole mountain side is just a swamp.
Sounds like we're trying to visit Mount Doom in Mordor. You have to go through the swamp land, the bogs,
But I guess in recent years, somebody has constructed a pig fence along the side of the cliff.
Yeah, because they got quite a few wild boar there now, don't they?
Right. Yeah. And so it is possible to hike to the top of the summit of the Mount Wailaele, but to do so is not a very rewarding experience.
Oh, it doesn't look that?
Because there's practically nothing up there. Nothing grows up there because of all the rain. It gets 40 feet of rain a year.
Wow!
And it's supposed to be one of the world's wettest spots.
Well, that's why we also dug, though, because we're on that same island, the Grand Canyon of the Pacific.
Right.
Which is, where is that at, Doug?
It's right here. It's
right
sort of between the the middle of the island and the western edge of the island.
In the western edge, that's where the Na Pali coast is, right?
No, it's the northern part.
All right, so it's right here then, is where the...
Yeah, that's the Waimea Canyon.
Oh, Waimea Canyon, yeah.
And we took the road up there. It's Route 550 that takes you along the edge of the Waimea Canyon.
Okay.
And we overlooked that, and you could see some of the clouds in the distance.
You could.
But we actually had a fairly good view of the canyon. But when we got up to the lookout over the Na Pali coast, we encountered a lot of clouds. Now, supposedly, the best time to go is in the morning. Well, we thought we went in the morning, but
We thought we did.
but by the time we got there, and took the roundabout way, I guess we would have had to gotten up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get there.
Or earlier, I know. Yeah, well...
The cruise that we took, it was Holo charters that they took, and it was a dinner cruise, which I thought was quite pretty amazing. They took us out to the Na Pali coast, and it was actually a fairly rough
It was
ride.
a very rough ride, as I found out to my chagrin,
Yeah, I've got a picture of you feeding the sharks.
Feeding the sharks? Oh, man. I prided myself, and that's pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Well, I tell you what, I've never gotten seasick on boats or car sick. And I said, I don't get sick on that. The only thing that got me a little bit when I was a 12-year-old boy is when I went on real spinny rides. But boy, this was rough. And of course, they gave us just enough food. I've heard you want to either be totally full or totally empty. But if you're in the middle, your stomach starts sloshing around just like the waves are. Man, and I said, I'm feeling this bad feeling about this. I raced to the back. I didn't quite make it.
Yeah, you didn't quite
I got close, but then I just kept going and going. I felt great afterward.
It emptied you out.
Oh, man, it really did.
What I found amazing, though, is when the crew actually got the dinner out, and they just started scurrying around, and everybody all of a sudden had food.
Had food, yep, they did.
And it was a really amazing time.
It was good dinner, too. It was good food,
Now, I wanted to describe the shape of the island, which was really interesting. Like I said, there's the Waimea Canyon, which they call the Grand Canyon of the Pacific, and it really is an amazing canyon. And then there's actually a divide where there's a lookout, and there's two, and it's Kekaha State Park is the name of the state park that's up there, and there's two lookouts. There's the Kalalau lookout, and then there's the Pu'uokila lookout.
I'm letting him remember all these names, because I can't remember them all.
And it's actually the second one, the Pu'uokila lookout, that's supposed to be the most spectacular.
Yeah.
But there was a guy up there who's talking about it. He was sort of like a guide of some sort. And
he seemed to know a lot about the wildlife and the
he pointed off in the distance, and he says, look back over the Waimea Canyon. You're standing on a divide here, and if you can see over here the ocean over here, but if you look down the Waimea Canyon, you can see the ocean over there.
Yeah, it's one spot in the island that's thin enough you can actually see both things. I'm looking at your map here. Where would that be at, Doug?
It'll be right up here, and then we would have seen the coast down here.
So it's the north west side and the southwest side is what we'd see.
That's right.
Okay, the island. Okay. All right.
Right in the center of the island is the world's wettest spot, or they say there's some place in India that gets more rain, but this is like they get like 700 inches or something like that.
Yeah, but it's interesting, Doug, because when we were there, it's not, you think it'd be totally cloud covered all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not. It comes like in the morning and maybe in the evening, twice a day sometimes, and then it's done.
And if you wait 15, 20 minutes or so, it'll clear out and you'll see the vista before you.
Yeah, I told you the story one time. I'll tell you. We were going up, Carol and I, my wife and I were going up. We were and it was a tour on Kauai, and we were going to the Grand Canyon Pacific. We were going up this bus, and it was raining really all the way. And there was this lady on there, and she was complaining, and I go, what? And she's yelling at the bus driver. This is a ripoff. I said, not his. He has no control of the weather. And I'm thinking to myself, just be quiet. It's not. You're not going to change anything. And it just kept ranting and ranting. And then we got to the very top, and everything cleared. It was beautiful. And I felt like saying, don't you feel like an idiot now? Because, it just didn't make any sense that she was doing that. Because it does. It clears up. And it's so gorgeous. The difference from the Grand Canyon in Arizona and this has lush foliage all over it. But you can see the rocks, but the color is just vibrant. And it stands out with all the foliages of that. Well,
and there's a road that goes around the edge of the island, and it goes all the way from the Kauai beach, which we couldn't get into.
You can't. Yeah, you couldn't get there. Yeah.
And I guess they've because it's such a popular beach, they have to have reservations quite a while in advance to actually use the beach.
Yeah.
And that's where the start of the Kalalau Trail is. That takes you up into the Na Pali coast and climbs into those mountains that you see from the cruise.
My legs wouldn't put up with it.
Yeah. Well, my daughter and son-in-law would dearly want to do that hike.
Yeah, they would do it.
It's like 11 miles, but it's really rough and kind of dangerous.
Perfect for them.
So that's the type of thing that they're into. So, but if you look on the eastern side of the island, it's actually looks like those are far more eroded than the western edge of the island, and I think it's because of the way the trade winds come in and the Kalalau Valley that we overlooked at that one lookout.
Yeah.
That's sort of like all the spectacular scenery that we saw on the cruise. From the other side.
Yeah.
Now, what I found interesting, and this was really new to me, was that as we took the cruise along the western edge of the island, where we went around, there's a spot where there's a very large beach area.
Right.
And it's the Polihale Beach State Park. And that's where they said, you can go over there and camp. But actually to get there, if you try to drive your car into the sand,
you won't.
And so you actually have to take a fairly good sized hike to get to the spot where you can camp.
Or could you go up to it by boat? I didn't remember that. Could you get there by boat?
I suppose you could, yeah.
From the water, anyway.
But anyway, once that ended, that's where the cliffs started. And those cliffs along that edge of the island were pretty much straight up and down.
Yep.
There's like 8 different canyons that are in that area where those cliffs are, but they're actually fairly narrow and they end in the cliff. They don't actually go all the way down.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting.
And so what it shows to me is that these canyons that are on this island are something that are because of the wetness of the island and a lot of the erosion that occurs on this island, not millions of years. I would say it's from the birth of the island during the flood. To the time
present day.
To the present day, there's enough erosion going on, and you can actually see it happening.
Well,
and it's something that I think shows you that, and if you actually take into account the flood itself causing a lot of erosion. That's another factor that is not something assumed by the evolutionists.
No, and the thing is, Doug, this is just another one of those examples. We've seen many of these examples where erosion is taking place way too quickly for the millions of years or even hundreds of thousands of years scenarios. We saw this in some of the arches in Arches National Park in Utah, right? Yeah. Right. And then we've seen we've talked about Niagara Falls. They had to shore it up because it was eroding too fast, based on even just a few 1,000 years. And now here's another example, Doug.
Yeah,
You know?
another example is Providence Canyon in Georgia. That's where in 1925, there was mismanagement of the land a little bit, and they started getting runoff from some of the rains, and it created a canyon right within a pretty good sized canyon right within the 20th century.
How long did it take? Do you have any idea how long it took to make that canyon?
Well, it was, like I said, 1925 is when the problem started.
And of course, we've talked many times at Spirit Lake, the canyon out there in Mount St. Helens, and we've also talked about the ramifications or the implications, if you will, of a lot of flood runoff or post-flood runoff, if you will, for the Grand Canyon itself. Long and the short of it is things don't take as long to erode the way they are. If you get enough rain and wind and things to do that, it can happen fairly quickly, and especially if it starts happening when it's not totally solidified or lithified. Sometimes you get erosion that happens faster there, or if you have other factors going on as well. I was interested, but the sheer rise and the height of there, and you say on the western side of the island, I suppose the eastern side is where the winds and rain come in there. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Okay. Is that actually a lot of the rain is in the northern part, the Princeville area, and west of there on that road. Now the road does not connect from the west to the east, and that's because you actually have to. They tried building a road there in 1950s.
Oh, did they? Okay.
And you can still see the remains of the earth moving equipment, what that got stuck in the swamp.
Oh no!
And so they tried and failed to connect the two things, and I think that actually contributes to the wildness of Kauai, because the only way that you actually can get from one end to the other is to go all the way around. If you were up in Princeville, which is up to the north, you have to go all the way around to the other side of the island
on the
coastline in order to get there. There's no way to get through the middle because there's a 3,000 foot crater of Mount Wailaele.
But the one advantage, the island is not all that big. It's not like, Doug, when we go from Lansing to the Keweenaw Peninsula in Michigan, it takes you 12 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't. How long would it take you to circle the island?
Like I think the island's about 35 miles wide.
Yeah.
And so it's like from here to Ithaca,
So I'm saying. But the roads are, it's not like straight roads, and they're not like big highways, but still.
But up at the northern end remember we went across 8 one-lane bridges.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's right, 8 we counted them because we couldn't figure out how many there were, and coming back we actually counted 8 of them.
But the beaches there are pretty spectacular, and we were at Anini Beach there, and Secret Beach is where our family went, and they climbed down the cliff to get to it.
Yeah.
And
Ted and Linda?
Ted and Linda, yeah. And so you and I took off and did some exploring there, but but if you go on the Kalalau Trail and take that hike, the 11-mile hike that I told you about, you can actually see some really nice beaches. The beaches at the Kalalau Beach is really pretty nice, but there's one just beyond it. You have to, and to get to it is pretty dicey.
Not the most friendly trail.
No, there's no trail. Okay, you have to swim to it.
Okay.
Anapu Beach.
Really?
Is a spectacular beach, pristine and unspoiled, and it's because nobody can get to it unless you swim to it. You have to,
Can you take a boat to it?
To take a boat, but you have to get out of the boat and swim to the beach.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
Because you can't land the boat on the beach.
Oh.
And
anchor the boat then? Okay. All right.
So that's the whole and so there are people who do camp there, but there's a arch there's actually two beaches, Hanapu beaches, two beaches that's connected by a cave.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, yeah.
And there's a seasonal waterfall that is in there too, and so a person, if they carry all their gear on their back when they're swimming, can get to this unspoiled beach. They can camp out and.
Well, your waterfall thing reminds you when we were out there. We took this trail to this one waterfall. Doug was, my knee was killing me, and I said I could do this, and it got worse and worse. And Ted actually had to help me out on a couple of things on the way back. We finally found the waterfall, and I go, boy, this is much bigger than anything in Tupamanon Fall. And then Doug said, Doug went back to the car. He says, I'm not, and because it was slippery, it rained that morning, and people were slipping down, getting mud baths. I did not slip to my credit, but we finally got to that waterfall. It was nice. We sat there for a few minutes, but it wasn't all that. And Doug, as I understand, that the two other waterfalls might have been better looking, but we ran out of time by the time it took us to get to the trail of the one water. So I was like, man, I chose poorly. I should have said, let's go to the waterfall.
I stepped off onto the muddy trail. I
said, this ain't working.
I said, nope, I'm out. And
yeah.
So, but that was the whole thing about Kauai is there are so many different things to explore, and there's a trail that goes to there are rough trails that lead to views of the Nualo Kai Beach and the Abafi Canyon, the Hanapu Beach, and the Kalalau Beach, and so from the road that we took to Waimea Canyon,
yeah,
there's actually trailheads that take you to these viewpoints, and
we saw a few. Yeah,
pretty spectacular.
Yeah. Have you been in any of them?
No, those trails are pretty rough. But they're in the blue book,
Boy, there are things. If I was 22 years old, boy, would I like to do some of that stuff. But,
yeah, exactly. You can actually. There is a trail that takes you through the Alakay swamp.
Oh yeah. Why would you want to go to the swamp?
Well, because it's actually historic. The Queen actually took the trail one time, and with a whole entourage, and so they, it's something that they had a ceremonial hiao, they call it. It's
okay.
And it was at the top of the mountain, and there's actually remains of that at the top of the mountain. But the guy who wrote this guidebook, Andrew Dowdy, it's a pretty famous book for Hawaii. Yeah. He's written a lot of these books and keeps them up to date. But he told about the time that he arranged to have a helicopter drop him off at the mountaintop.
Oh, okay.
And it was a time right after a rainstorm had passed over, and you had a high pressure area sitting right on top of the mountain, and so they were able to get the helicopter in for a little while and drop them off. And, and then I think they hiked out, but I guess they've done that hike several times, and it's pretty. It is pretty intense, challenging. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, there's a lot of history that goes with Kauai, and it's if you talk about the King Kamehameha, I guess that's his name.
Well, I never did that.
And there was the Kauai had its own king.
And it did. Okay.
It did for a while, and they went to war, and finally they persuaded the king of Kauai to join them, and he ended up leaving the island and ended up on the Big Island, and that's where he died. But it was studying the history of the Hawaii is pretty fascinating. That's
so Doug, let's go a bit. We're back. what we got? What 4 minutes left or whatever?
Yeah.
See if we can go through this because the difference between a young Earth creation and an evolutionary long age scenario is they all say the Kauai is the youngest of the islands, right?
Kauai would be the oldest.
Oh, the oldest. I'm sorry, the oldest of the islands. Yeah, right. And that's why the Hawaii, the Big Island, is still active volcanically.
Right. Yeah.
And the other ones are all volcanic islands. But a young Earth scenario says, yeah, in the same order, but there's whole different reasons as to why they believe this. So why don't you kind of go into some of that?
You have the evolutionary explanation and the creationary explanation, and the creationary explanation just has the evolutionary explanation speeded up.
That's what I wanted to get to. Okay, so...
Yeah, so you have a plate starting up in the Aleutians where you have movement that's going on during the flood or even afterward. And these volcanoes just start popping up, pop, 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 pop.
Okay.
And they created seamounts as they went along, and but they would sort of fizzle out as the plate moved
Sure.
rapidly.
Oh, I see what you okay.
But as the plates started slowing down, then the volcanic activity increased and makes the bigger islands.
Oh, okay.
And so this takes the Midway Island is part of it, and then there's the seamount chain goes all the way up to the Aleutians. And it's actually part of that ring of fire that goes around the thing. And so then you have, of the Hawaiian Islands itself, you have Kauai, along with Nihihau, Lehua, Kalua, those little islands off the coast. Those would have erupted first, and then as the plate continued to move, it went to Oahu and the Molokai, Lanai, Maui, Kahu'ulaui, and lastly the Big Island. And the Big Island is still part of that chain. And then that island and seamount chain from the Aleutians were built up rapidly first.
Right. Was that kind of going along with the idea of continental drift, and we believe continental sprint?
Right.
I mean, it's more like how fast it was moving, not the slow, gradual thing that
The
happened.
evolutionary scenario will have you believe that those islands from the Aleutians on along the chain were eroded over millions of years.
I see. Okay.
And so the erosion that took place over millions of years. Here we have erosion taking place as a result of the flood, and then also as a result of the weather patterns that are in Hawaii right now.
Right. And it would have been there's flood, then you post-flood runoff. The islands rise up and the mountains sink, the valleys sink down, the mountains rise up. All that stuff plays into this stuff,
Right. And so if you look at the Hawaiian Islands with biblical glasses and a flood world view, you can find a fairly reasonable explanation for their origin.
Yep.
We hope this helps you in understanding Hawaii, and we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.
Yep. Bye now.